mistaken. She's being taken care of, so if you hear a little crying because she hears my voice, I apologize. I wanted to first, before we get started, thank Sean for having me out here. He invited me 9 months ago, and so I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I also need to give a shout out to Ferguson and Brian Jackson, and to the previous speaker, Chairman Down, for trying to help me with my presentation, because I did not bring a computer. It was a choice between the dog and the computer, and the dog won. And so they have helped me along with Nick, who is the in-house tech, to get this presentation going. So if you enjoyed it, it's all for their sake. So thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. So how many of you have ever had a job? This is very audience participation, so you can laugh, but I'm serious. How many of you have ever had a job? Okay, great. How many of you hope to have a job in the future? Okay, good. So, and how many of you, and I use the word atheist because it is probably the most provocative term, but how many of you consider yourselves atheists, non-theist, humanist, upright, somebody who doesn't believe in the supernatural, anything else? Hands up. Okay, good. So this is a good talk, right? Okay, good. All right. So I'm in the right place. So, caution atheist order. So, I think this is a very important thing to get started with. I am an attorney. I'm licensed in Iowa, currently living in New Jersey. I'm trying to get licensed there. But nothing here is legal advice. This is informational only. So please do not call New Jersey and tell them that I'm your lawyer. I drafted legislation for 4 years in Iowa. Yes, people actually do that. So that shit that you read and you go, what the fuck is going on? I wrote that, but I tried to write it really well. So there's some parts of the Iowa code that actually read really well. You can just credit that for me. I worked for the Secular Coalition for America for 18 months. I was your lobbyist in Washington, D.C. I'm not, so please don't bitch to me about what they're doing. I have no responsibility for it anymore. And now I've been an activist for 7 years. And I'm the administrative director for American Atheists. You can now bitch to me if you're not happy with them. Most importantly, because I said so. Okay, atheism in the workplace. What I'm going to talk to you today is about what is the law that affects you if you're an atheist at work. What are your rights? What happens when you have a zealot next to you in your cubicle? What can you do? What must your employer do? And why laughter is the best medicine for curing all ails between Christians and atheists and anybody else you run into in the workplace. Atheism versus religion. Okay, question. Is atheism a religion? No. Yes.
What?
Legally, non-belief receives the same protection and status as any religion under the Constitution. Does that make sense? No, of course not. Think of it this way. You have the right to free speech, right? You also have the right to not speak, correct? Right, hence the picture of these 3 very brave men who were protesting recently in a state capitol that I don't remember about women's rights. So, if you have the right to speak and you have the right to not speak, those are equal protections under the Constitution. It goes the same for the right to have no religious belief. This is a very important case when we had a very friendly Supreme Court. That wasn't actually so long ago. I know a lot of you weren't born in 1985, but for those of you who were, it was a friendlier time. And I'm going to read this because it's really important. I hope you guys can see the green. At one time it was thought that this right, and we're talking about the right of religious freedom, merely prescribed the preference of one Christian sect over another. So, Baptists over Protestants, oh wait, that's the same thing, Presbyterians, or, Catholics versus everybody else, but would not require equal respect for the conscience of the infidel, the atheists, and it goes on to list a couple others. Good to know we're not the same as the infidel. But when the underlying principle has been examined in the crucible of litigation, see, they did not listen to me when they started drafting this shit. It's very complicated. The court has unambiguously concluded that the individual freedom of conscience protected by the First Amendment embraces the right to select any religious faith or none at all. It's really important. It's really important that you guys know that. So when someone comes up and says, atheism is a religion, you can't just say, no, it's not. Because it's not. We're not religion. We don't have the things that say that we're a religion, but we are protected like a religion under the Constitution. And you need to embrace that because it gives you a lot of freedoms and protections, not just in the workplace, but in other places. So, is atheism a religion? No. But yes. We fought for this. Martin Luther King, and many, many, many other people, white, black, all different colors, all different socioeconomic backgrounds, fought for equal rights in the 1960s. Women fought for equal rights. The LGBT community has fought for equal rights. And we fought for this too, just to be the same along other people. So we have Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employers from discrimination, and in particular for us, against individuals because of their religion. And this does mean atheism. This means hiring you, firing you, and other terms and conditions of employment. Now, when I applied to be the lobbyist for the Secular Coalition for America, I put everything that I could that had anything to do with atheism on my resume. Would I do that if I was applying to Hobby Lobby? No! But if I did, and somebody else who was a Christian put all their stuff on their resume, and I could prove the reason Hobby Lobby didn't hire me was because I was an atheist, I could sue. Now, trying to prove that is harder than finding a needle that's in a haystack, a really big one in Kansas, but you can do it. And let's say Hobby Lobby found out after they hired me that I was an atheist, and until that I was a perfect employee, and then they fired me, that would be illegal as well. And there are other things. But, and for those of you who don't know, Hobby Lobby is very Christian, right? Everybody know that? How many didn't know that? Now you do. Don't shop at Hobby Lobby. I didn't say that. You have to edit that out. Okay, so some really important things for you guys to know. And this is kind of the only boring part of the presentation, but it's really important, and that's why we have a fist. Your employer may not treat you more or less favorably because of your non-belief. How many have ever experienced any kind of discrimination, positive or negative, because you're an atheist? I've actually gotten better treatment because I'm an atheist. It's kind of awesome. I had a closet agnostic as a supervisor. He liked me better. Couldn't tell anybody. You cannot be required to participate or refrain from participating in a religious activity as a condition of employment. So, we've actually gone through and found that there are employers that require this. How many of you know the World Relief Fund? Okay, you need to know the World Relief Fund because they get millions of your tax dollars, and one of the things they require is that you be a Christian and that you do all kinds of Christian things. Right now it's legal. It's another path we'll go down in a different talk, if you invite me. Employers must reasonably accommodate employees' sincerely held religious, non-religious practices, unless doing so would impose an undue hardship on the employer. There's an asterisk on this because we're going to talk more in depth about it, but for example, if you want to be a TSA employee and wear a hijab. Everybody know what a hijab is? Okay, so if you are a woman who is Islamic and you want to wear a headscarf, turns out that the federal government says you can do that. Employers must take steps to prevent non-religious and religious harassment of employees. We're going to talk about a little bit more about that. And they may not retaliate against you asserting your rights. We're not going to talk about that. That's another conversation. See Joe Ray because you'll just be sexually frustrated by this point. Okay, so I'd like to say that because we fought for the law, we won, but we really didn't. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act requires two things that allow employers pretty much to get out of doing anything to help us. Requires employers to reasonably accommodate the religious beliefs and to prove that they would not do an undue hardship. So what is an undue hardship? There's a whole bunch of language up there that you can read, but basically just look at the green stuff. If it costs more than administrative costs, you're screwed. So anybody, whether you're religious or non-religious, if it's going to cost your employer anything other than just, paperwork, you're screwed. Everybody read that? Had a chance to read it? Doesn't want to read it? Okay. So, here's a really good example. Back in 1977, there was a guy who didn't want to work the Sabbath, and I believe in the details he did not want to work from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, and I could be having that wrong, and I apologize to anybody who does the Sabbath if I got it wrong. He was transferred from one office to another, and that put him at the bottom of the seniority list for the union. The union didn't give a shit about his religious beliefs, so he sued TWA. TWA showed the court that taking on the union's rules would be more than an undue burden. It would be a huge burden, and the court said, you're right, guys should have sued the union instead. So, don't know know if he would have won, but that's pretty much it. So, Pastafarians. Any Pastafarians here? Try getting talked about the Pirate Bay off? Not gonna happen. And I say that because I actually had somebody ask me that after I gave this presentation. They wanted to see if they could do it like the Jews get all the days off. Yeah, not gonna happen. Okay, so reasonable accommodation. What is it? It's a good faith attempt to resolve the conflict between religious needs and job requirements. So, here's a couple examples I always talk about. AT&T required an employee, just all employees, to sign a diversity pledge, saying that they respected everyone's rights as individuals to be who they are. And it included a thing about respecting homosexuality as individual choice. And guy didn't want to sign it, refused to sign it, they fired him. He sued, and he won 6 figures, a lot of money for doing that. And the court said it was because there was no discussion, there was no chance. Oh, hello, people over here. Hi. There was no opportunity for them to talk about it. They didn't try to accommodate his beliefs. They just said flat out he had to sign this. It was a condition of employment, and they didn't try to accommodate anyone his religious beliefs. On the flip side, in Boise, Idaho, Hewlett-Packard put up diversity posters, and one of them pictured a gay person, and that is what the court says, a gay person. And one of the employees didn't like this, so he started putting up verses against homosexuality and diversity in his cubicle. And HP said, take them down. In fact, they took them down for him. He said, well, then you have to take down a diversity poster that shows a gay person, because I don't like it. And they sent him home with pay and said, you need to rethink that. He came back and said, nope, and they fired him. And he lost, because HP had the right to create an environment of diversity in their office, and they weren't imposing anything specific on his religious beliefs. So, 2 different scenarios, kind of both about diversity, but they are very different. It's a little complicated, but basically what it means is make sure you're not imposing your religious beliefs on your coworkers, and watch those t-shirts you're wearing. Okay, so what are the consequences? According to the EEOC, which is the government agency which puts a lot of these regulations into place, religious-based charges have increased 50% since 1997, which is huge. And payouts have increased almost 160%. So, why I'm telling you this is because people are complaining, and you should complain. I worked for the state legislature, and they pray. First thing they do when they gavel in, for both the House and the Senate, is they pray. And I had permission from my supervisor not to be there when they prayed. No matter what my job requirement was, I did not have to be in the room, in the chambers, when they prayed. Well, I needed to speak to one of the members of the Senate about a bill that was coming up first thing in the morning. And the only way to do that was to be in the chamber to catch this particular senator. And I did, and we discussed the bill, and I got the changes I needed. And just as I was finishing up, I saw the majority leader about ready to gavel in. So I started to head for the exit. Just before I passed through the main vestibule, they gaveled it, and all the doors swing shut. And they have guards that stand at the door. And there's one door that's left open. And so I headed for it at a very quick pace. A 79-year-old man, who's one of these doorkeepers, reached out to grab me to stop me from leaving, because it was considered a rule that no one could leave during the prayer. And I was about to break that rule. He was going to physically stop me. Well, I'm a little more nimble than a 79-year-old man. I managed to dodge him, and I literally ran from the room. And I reported it to my boss, and I literally had an EEOC charge that I should have made. I chose not to, but I contemplated it for a long time. First of all, there's no way I should be held captive in a room for a prayer. It doesn't matter what it is. And that's what they were going to do, and someone tried to physically stop me. That is a big deal. So, if you have something that's going on, I see there's a question, can you please hold it just for a little bit? I will take plenty of questions again, I promise. We will not go over. We will keep to the schedule. But yeah, so that shouldn't have happened. And the fact that it did, and I told my boss, which is what you should do, your supervisor or whoever is in charge of you should tell them when that happens and you should document it. And I did, even though I chose not to pursue it. So anyway, you should be complaining. You should be taking notes. You should be documenting what's happening to you. Federal law is the baseline. It is the minimum standard of what happens or what applies to you as an employee. So these particular federal laws that I'm talking about, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and its regulations, only apply to employers that have 15 employees or more. However, how many of you are from Kansas? How many of you are from someplace else? You'll have a state law that probably applies to smaller employees, and you need to find out. States often have more stringent or at least equal laws in their own states. So you need to find out what applies to you and find out what your protections are. Ignorance is no excuse. And how many of you, or anybody here a humanistic Jew? Anybody here humanistic, anything religious? Okay, you're out of luck. Cultural traditions don't count. So if you just count it as a cultural tradition, you don't get any protection. Okay, so we have an exception that proves the rule. Anybody here consider themselves a member of the cloth? Do you work for a religious employer? Okay, well, this applies too. I didn't think it would, and I won't make some of the bad jokes I was going to. I will be polite. Okay, any nuns? Any monks? Any Catholic priests? Okay, I'm safe. All right. In January, SCOTUS, which is our cheeky way of talking about the Supreme Court, came down with a decision from Hosanna Tabor. Hosanna Tabor was a Lutheran school in one of the upper Midwestern states. I want to say Michigan, but it might have been Wisconsin. That hired teachers based on voting in the congregation, and it was considered a calling. And teachers, and this happened to be an elementary school teacher, I believe, did more than just teach, math and reading and things like that. They also did Bible teaching. So, and because they were voted on by the congregation and it was considered a calling, they were considered some kind of minister. And she left because she became ill. And she filed all the right paperwork, and they hired someone to replace her, and then she signaled she was coming back. And they voted not to hire her back. So she filed suit under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And for the first time, the Supreme Court ruled on what has been commonly referred to as the ministerial exception. This is what allows the Catholic Church to ignore gender discrimination laws and not hire women to be priests. It's what allows nuns not to hire men, monks not to have women, and other kinds of things to go on, and for the churches to bypass some of the federal laws and state laws that apply to other nonprofit organizations. I was going to say organizations, but also companies and businesses, organizations that some of us work for. So what basically SCOTUS said was that if you're a minister, you can be hired, fired, or anything in between and not have any federal law apply to you. And this also then applies to most state laws, which are predicated on federal law. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Equal Rights Act of 1964, any of these federal laws that are meant to protect you no longer apply. And what sucks about this is that they didn't define exactly who counts as a minister. Basically, how it was interpreted by several people who do this kind of interpretation after the Supreme Court comes down with a ruling said is it's anybody who has or provides religious training. Could be the janitor. It was very broad. And why this is unfair is because those of us who work in the nonprofit industry, who work for organizations, who have the same calling to do things to help people, especially charitable works or teaching or training, our organizations don't get out of any of this. We have to follow the same laws, we have to follow the same rules, and we have to pay the same taxes as any corporation or organization. Okay, could we not do the flashbulb thing because it blinds me and I can't see your faces? I'm sorry, thank you. So it sucks. And this is a bad thing. But of course, everyone, including the Catholic Church, thought it was great for religious freedom. Okay, so we have the law for 1964, the Civil Rights Act, because it's meant to protect you. It's supposed to protect pastafarians who come in dressed like a pirate on Like a Pirate Day. It's supposed to protect those of us who wear the Darwin fish. It's supposed to protect anyone who is religious and the crazy people I've got up there. Anyone not recognize someone up there? I'd be happy to go through them, just so we can all laugh. Okay, Pat Robertson! Yay! Tom Cruise. How many went and saw Mission Impossible? Be honest. Come on, yeah, Ghost Protocol, it was awesome. It was cool. He sucks as a Scientologist, but he's a pretty awesome movie star. That's the Mormon Temple in Salt Lake City. How many have been there? Yeah, seriously, you gotta go, just for the experience. And tell them you're an atheist. Wait till you see their faces. I now live in New Jersey, and that is where, it's the New York Giants, right? Or is it the Jets? The Jets? Yeah, it sucks. Because if you don't recognize him, that's Tim Tebow. And poor Heaven's Gate. You know, whatever you believe, and they all killed themselves because they thought the world was ending 12 years ago. Okay, so we talk a lot about persecution by the religious at work for atheists, but how many of you would you consider yourselves firebrands? Firebrand atheists. How many would consider yourselves diplomats? How many, depends on the situation. How many of you have no idea what I'm talking about? Okay, so a firebrand is somebody who is ready to take on the argument, debate, to tell a Christian they're wrong no matter what, in the vein of P.Z. Myers, J.T. Everhard, Richard Dawkins, Chris Hitchens. Any of those names sound familiar? Yeah, okay. Diplomats are more like, well, me, and I'm trying to think of any like famous diplomats, and we tend to be more low-key. I can't think of any, but you know who you are. So, in the workplace, you do not want to be a firebrand. You need to leave the Christians alone. Be nice to the Christians. Title VII requires that the employer maintain a work environment that's free from intimidation and repeated insult. It is not good when you tell your Christian friends you're still going to church, or, you know, Easter, you believe in zombie Jesus, because they can complain about that, and what you think is a joke is not funny to them. Just like when they tell you you're going to hell, it's not funny to you. Okay, well, we think it's funny, but most people would not think it's funny when they're told they're going to hell. So, basically, when it says that if a harasser's religious demands are continued and you come after you, if you keep telling someone they shouldn't be a Christian or they should stop believing that shit, that can be considered harassment. Just like if they keep coming after you and telling you that you should accept the word of God, hello people over here, I keep forgetting you, that Jesus is your savior and if you don't accept you're going to go to hell, you can complain about that and you can, you know, like Sean said, you know, that we need to go to war over it. You can complain about that. But it's really important to document it, and you need to tell your supervisor or your boss, and if it's your supervisor who's doing it, that's when it gets really fun. You need to tell their supervisor. Hostile work environment. Anyone ever had a hostile work environment? Yeah, isn't it fun? When offensive conduct is directed at an employee because of your religion or non-religion, and it's when it's so severe or pervasive that it affects the employment, and when your employer fails to take steps to correct it. This means you have to tell the employer. You can't have this go on, quit, and then sue if your employer didn't know about it. And when it means employer, it means your boss. Your boss has a responsibility to fix it. So what this doesn't tell you is that you need to keep track of stuff. If you send an email telling your boss, your supervisor about this, you need to keep a copy of it. Take it home with you. BC somebody on it, the HR person that you go talk to. If you can't talk to your boss and it's not good to go to your supervisor, tell somebody in HR. It's really important that you document it and you tell people. And if you're then fired, you have a lawsuit, most likely. Not for sure, and I'm not telling anyone to go and do this. I'm just explaining the steps that are necessary in order to make a claim. What's really great is the Supreme Court has said that a hostile environment does not mean that you have to show severe psychological damage or that disturbance. So you don't have to go on pills in order to prove this, or end up killing yourself or trying to commit suicide. I mean, a lot of this comes out of sexual harassment, but it applies to religious harassment too. You just have to show that it detracted from your job, discouraged you from remaining on the job, or kept you from advancing in your career. Okay, I hate to tell you this, but the religious really are out to get you. They can proselytize at work until it becomes a problem, defined as harassment, or it's an undue hardship on the employer. Corporate chaplains are okay. Anybody here ever had a corporate chaplain? Yeah, they're fun. They cannot be required, you cannot be required to talk to them or to attend an event that they are having. And if it becomes a requirement, you have grounds for a complaint. Prayer groups are okay, so long as they don't interfere with others, which also means that atheist groups can be okay. So if you want to start, if you have a prayer group at your work, as long as it's not funded by the employer, you can also have one that's atheist in nature, as long as it's not funded by the employer. Now, where I work, we are an atheist group, so it's all good. And if you work at Hobby Lobby, it's slightly different. And if you work for the Catholic Church, you're mandated to go. But those are exceptions. For the general population, not so true. And posting religious quotes and announcements is okay as long as it's a company-wide policy. So if you have a community board where they allow you to post things, like announcements about your kid's school production, or that you're having a garage sale next month, or whatever, you can post things. And that usually means there will be religious things. That also means you can post your atheist stuff, unless it's offensive or against company policy. So make sure you find out ahead of time. And not kissing stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go through some scenarios real quick. And one of the reasons I asked them to leave the lights on because it's mandatory. What would happen next that could make a difference to Anne, positive or negative? Anybody? What would be a bad thing that could happen? If she was ostracized, yes. If her employer suddenly started to give good assignments to someone else. What if someone came to her and said, "Why didn't you go?" It's okay, right? And she can tell. It doesn't say that Anne's an atheist. Maybe she just chose not to go. But if she does say she's an atheist and anything changes, she should document that. Peter and his coworkers receive a memo from his supervisor providing new company policy about time off procedures. The supervisor signs the memo after her name with the following symbol. Everybody recognize that? Jesus fish. What questions or information do we need to know about this situation? Is it a religious company? I mean, if it's the Catholic Church, and she's the Catholic Church secretary, and he's the janitor, it's okay. If it's, I don't know, a Koch brothers company, it's probably okay. I don't know. If it's American Atheist, she's in trouble. What are Peter's options? I would go to HR. What? Delete it, yeah. I would go to HR and say, I'm a little bit concerned about this. You don't have to go to your supervisor and confront her. In fact, that's often the worst thing you can do. I would go to HR and just say, I'm concerned about this, and I'd like to know what company policy is. On a community events board in her office's lunchroom, Christy posts a flyer about her humanist group's monthly meeting. Later that day, while having lunch with coworkers, Christy sees someone tear the flyer down and throw it away. What are Christy's options? Confront the individual. Okay. What would you do? Confront the individual? HR box. Very good. Put another one up. Put a note on it. I know who you are. Don't tear this one down. Yeah. So this happens all the time. If you put one up. How many have heard of student groups facing this problem too? They put posters up and someone comes right along and tears them down and they have to put them behind protected cases. So it happens in the workplace too. While standing around with coworkers and talking, a coworker of Jason's makes a derogatory remark about atheists and claims it was a joke. Has the coworker violated any workplace rules? Yes or no?
Yeah.
No? Free speech? And just making one joke? No. What should Jason should or could do? You could tell HR. What about saying something right then? I don't know if Jason's an atheist, but what if the joke was about gays, or Black Americans, women, or Muslims? I think it's really important that when somebody makes some kind of derogatory comment, it's really hard, but we need to stand up and say something. You're in a circle of friends and somebody says, Yeah, we know all atheists are going to hell. Or, you know, atheists are Satan worshipers. It's really important to stand up and say something. Or, you know, all women are really whores. Or, you know, he must be gay. It's really important that we stand up for each other. It's really important that we stand up to any kind of bigotry or hatred. And it's really hard. But if you don't, who will? Okay, a little bit lighter note. How many of you have ever been asked for money for a religious group at work? Oh yeah. So, these are some of the ones when I put out a poll, and I asked for the Boy Scouts, the United Way. Now, the United Way, in all fairness, is not religious itself, whatever, but they have a whole bunch of religious organizations that they divide their money between. Co-workers, kids, groups, and schools, and company charity drives. I've worked in the private sector, the public sector, and I have been asked to give to so many groups for charity for my company that were religious. I wanted to scream, and the pressure, the social pressure, is ridiculous. They put your name down if you don't give. They ostracize you. They invite people who did give to dinners. You get free pizza parties. It pissed me off. But in the last few years, there's been a really great movement in the atheist community to show the rest of the world that we do give. Because we tend to give very anonymously. Because we don't do it through churches. And we don't do it in groups. So, here's what I suggest we do. When someone asks you for money for a religious organization or cause, you ask, okay, I'll give to yours if you give to mine. And watch them recoil faster than someone who sees a snake. If you have kids or don't have kids but want to support a kids organization, go for Camp Quest. Has anyone here heard of Camp Quest? Okay, if you haven't, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. If you haven't, find someone with their hand up and go talk to them because I cannot talk to all of you who haven't. Otherwise, go to campquest.org and look it up. It's a fantastic secular camp for kids, and they have them all over the country right now, and it's an amazing organization. We also have the Foundation Beyond Belief, which is basically a charitable organization where we give our money every month, and every quarter they decide on, I think it's 4 or 5 different charitable groups now in different categories, and we pool our money and we give it to them. The Secular Student Alliance supports high school and college student groups. Why not help them? If you have a local group and you're doing a community project, ask them to donate to that. And you can also go to your HR group, your HR representative, and ask them to ensure that the company funds can go to non-religious choices as well. This is what I did. I did not like the United Way campaign at my company, so I asked that there be non-religious choices as well, and they made a change. And they also stopped publishing the names of people who didn't give. And remember, it could always be worse. But what does this all mean? Atheists are protected by the Constitution, the First Amendment, and the 1964 Civil Rights Act against religious discrimination. You have rights, you have protections, but you have to know what they are in order to be able to be protected. Ignorance is not going to protect you. So just throwing up your hands and saying, I have no protection, there's nothing I can do, it's hopeless, is not going to get you any awards, and I will not help you. So you have to be proactive. You have to get off your duff, you have to do something about it. Your employer has no right to impose religious views upon you, with exceptions, so to the religious people in the room. Sorry. You have no right to harass others at work because of their religious beliefs, and they have no right to harass you. So as we become more outspoken, we need to be careful about how we approach others, just as others need to be more considerate about how they approach us. It goes both ways. And pastafarians are doomed. I am an atheist. I'm a proud atheist. My name is Kneif. I'm the Administrative Director for American Atheists. You guys have been a fantastic audience, and I would be more than happy to take questions for the remainder of the time. Thank you. I believe there's a mic up here now, and I know there was somebody who had a question, so if you can come down and do the mic. I ask that you give your first name and where you're from, and then ask your question. How's Sagan doing? I don't know where she is anymore.
She misses you. She's right here.
Hey, hi baby. Hello.
I'm Knief. I'm from Wichita. I have 2 questions. A lot of your presentation was encouraging us to speak out. So it seems to me, I'm not aware, but it seems to me that if we did, your Anne example, if she was ostracized, there may be some recourse if she was able to prove that that was a result of her speaking out. It seems to me that would be very, very difficult. And so much so that it may discourage people from wanting to speak out. Can you talk about how to prove something like that and if it's difficult?
Okay. Anne was the one who, the company offered prayer service after 9/11 for its employees. It was not compulsory, so she chose not to go, and she was the only one. And the question is, what would be the positive or negative things that could happen? One, it could start a conversation about religious beliefs, and that could go either way. Second, it could be that because she didn't go to a prayer service, people make assumptions, and she might start to get maybe worse assignments from her boss, or she might be ostracized from group activities, or other things might happen. She might get an email or be called, and told she's not a good employee. The thing to do is to document it. So if you pin a message saying there's going to be a prayer service offered for everybody in the company, and it doesn't say that you have to go, you keep a copy of it, you take it home, and then you don't go, and then you wait and see what happens. And so it's up to you to be proactive in making sure that you do the steps. And when I say you speak out, it's to go talk to HR or to your supervisor, if it's a coworker. You take the appropriate steps. And most companies have a manual that will tell you what to do for harassment. It may not specifically talk about religious harassment. Most companies will address sexual harassment, but there will be a chain of command or a way to report it, and you should follow that. The best thing to do is to keep a diary of what's going on or a journal of anything that happens, and also to any emails or messages that come through, any conversations you have, to document the date, who they were with, and the gist of the conversation. Does that help?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of questions. Like say Anne said she didn't go because she was an atheist.
Okay.
Say before that point she was a stellar employee, no disciplinary. But then after that point, she started to get the bad assignments or the things you alluded to kind of clue her in that things may have changed regarding her perception in that company. She could document the fact that she got some bad assignments or that she did it before, but I would still think that wouldn't prove should she be laid off because 2 supervisors above her that are very religious and just didn't like her as a result of that. I still think it would be very difficult for her to right that wrong, so to speak.
Causality is
The causality is hard to prove, and there's a lot that's hard to prove, but the first thing that she can do is document it, and then she can go to the EEOC and file a claim. And then they talk to her about it, and then they come and they talk to the employer. It's not easy to do, but if we don't start, and like I said, that's why I put the thing in there about since 1997, claims have doubled, and they're being paid out. So companies also don't want to be seen as having problems, both against minority religions, including atheists, or against Christians. So most of the time they'll settle them. And whatever the behavior was, whatever the employer or the employees were doing that was wrong, they will then correct the behavior. So I'm not saying that you should sue and get a lot of money or anything like that, but I am saying that it is worth it. And you have to decide on your situation. It's a hard job market out there. And these are hard choices, but it's always better to know what your rights are and that you have options, but you have to know what they are ahead of time so that when the situation arises, you take the proper steps. So if you decide to do something, for example, when I was trying to physically stop from leaving that room, that chamber before the prayer, I took the steps that I was supposed to. I documented. I wrote down what happened. I told my supervisor, and then I had to make the decision about whether to report it. And I chose not to. But I did everything that I was supposed to.
So perfect segue. So that scenario, was that a court of law you were in?
I was in the chamber of the Iowa Senate.
The Iowa Senate. So I kind of have a 2-part question. Because I know this exists in our community, in our courtrooms. They have prayer groups. And you explained why that was legal.
It wasn't a prayer group.
I understand. That's kind of two separate issues kind of related to for that and for them to do that where you were, how is that legal? How separation of church and state exists. How is it legal for them to do that, to have that prayer in that setting?
That's how I became an atheist activist, because it pissed me off. There is a court case called Chambers v. Marsh. A good friend of mine, actually Ernie Chambers, who was a member of the legislature in Nebraska. Somebody knows him. Great guy, quite a character, isn't he? Yeah, I lived in Nebraska for a time when I worked for the newspaper there. That's how I know him. I interviewed him. In fact, he tried to sue God just a few years ago. And when God didn't answer, he wanted to make it home. But they said no. Anyway, he sued, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said that it was ceremonial deism, in a way. And there was this idea of tradition. And that as long as, and they made kind of some points where if you follow these certain rules, it was okay. Now, Iowa violates a bunch of them, but unless somebody sues about it, and I thought about it for a long time. Iowa pays the people who come and pray. They also give them mileage at the same rate that they give mileage to the legislators. And then they close the door and they don't allow anyone to come in or out during the prayer. So it's entrapment as far as I'm concerned. That includes pages, it includes interns, people who are not sworn legislators, and there are legislators who get up and leave every day, so they're not in there during the prayer. And they don't, and they are almost always, not secular, the opposite word, sectarian. They had one Islamic imam come and do it, and it caused them to stir. They've never had one, and they've had one rabbi come the entire time since I started in 2004, or excuse me, 2006, and I've been watching this for 6 years now. So it is legal because there's a court case that says they can do it. But should they know, even the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. House Senate have on staff chaplains. They get paid money, your money, to do it and to be there. Didn't say it was fun. Didn't say it was right, just said it was. Next question.
Hi, Amanda. I was wondering if you could give a little more guidance about what constitutes a hostile work environment and harassment. You said one joke is not enough to constitute that. And I'm thinking of this, from both sides of it, from a Christian or religious person's side as well as the atheist side. And another kind of related question is, to what degree is it appropriate to have discussion or debate, not necessarily harass, but to actually have a discussion, religion versus atheism in a workplace?
I think you need to be very careful, especially as atheists are more open. This is something that I had not talked about previously. This is the first time I'm bringing this up because people, especially atheists, thank you for your question, are being more open, and we are much more likely to push our point. That's why I asked how many of you think you're firebrands. One person's discussion about atheism and the wrongs of Christianity is another person's harassment. And you need to be very careful of that, because think about it from your perspective. Someone who thinks they're being a good Christian and telling you that you need to accept Christ and that you're going to go to hell for your sins thinks that they're helping you, and you think they're an asshole. And you would report them. So you need to see it from our perspective and from their perspective both ways. So I think in the workplace you need to be very careful. Take them out for a beer instead and have the conversation on neutral territory. Be very careful in the workplace with that kind of conversation. In fact, I wouldn't have it at all. Because you want to be on the side of angels when it comes to this. You don't want them to yes, I said it. You don't want them to be able to say, well, he started the conversation. And once I found out I was an atheist, I felt it was my Christian duty to set him or her on the right path. Well, what are you going to say to that? I thought I was trying to save his soul. What are you going to say? I wanted to make sure he went to hell? I mean, it's really hard. So here's some of the actual language, and I didn't go through all of it. If you are the harasser, what you are doing is you are making religious demands. And because atheism is considered a religion under the Constitution, we get the same protections, but we also get vilified the same way. So you can be considered a religious harasser if someone perceives that you're trying to get rid of their religion for them, if you're trying to make them non-religious, okay? It can be perceived that way. Has it come up yet? I haven't found a case yet, but the way I see firebrands going after people, I can see it happening. So I just think we need to be aware of it. You know, I think it would be very easy for Christians to make a case, a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, anybody to say, okay, he's harassing me because I'm religious and he's not, or she, or whoever it is to. So it can be conversation and participation where you're saying, oh, zombie Jesus, really? You know, or what's the new word they come out, a lichen, or what's the not lichen? There's another word for it. Yes, thank you. So anyway, in a hostile work environment is where the offensive conduct is actually put at you. Like you come into work and there are Bible verses on your computer, you know, they've laid out, or they present you with a Bible, or, you know, they send invitations to you constantly through the email to come and to prayer services, that kind of thing. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I'm Justin. I live in Chanute, Kansas, which is the very rural, very religious southeast corner of the state. Someone answered my question with your last statement there. I previously had an employer who every single week in our paycheck envelopes would be stuffed a photocopy from, it would either be a conservative, Republican, or Christian newsletter. And I was wondering if that's I just threw them away. I didn't worry about it, but I always wondered if it was actually useful.
Put it in your paycheck? No. Not the political or the other one. What steps you should take? Probably talk to HR, but that's difficult. And you can do it anonymously as well. You know, you can put something in an envelope with a question and mail it to HR without your address on it. Don't always think you have to do it in person. It can be scary, but then make a photocopy of what you sent and the date and who you sent it to. You can you know, send it, return receipt in the mail to make sure they get it, make sure they sign for it, to verify that you sent it. And then you have verification that it was mailed to them, but they don't know who sent it. So there's ways to do it to make sure that somebody in the company got it, that they have to acknowledge that they received it, but they don't know who sent it. So you can preserve your anonymity, okay? And that's important in places where you're in rural Kansas, or you're in Oklahoma, or you're in the middle of Iowa, and you work for the legislature and you can't come out as an atheist. So, you know, there's ways to do it. You have to be creative, you have to think about it, and you can always email me and ask me. I can't give you legal advice, but I can certainly help you problem solve. Next.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm from Kansas right now, but I'm in the Nebraska Guard, and I have to stand in formation while they do prayers constantly. It happens. Am I just screwed, or is there legal recourse, or there is no human resources?
Well, there is the President of the United States, but he's kind of screwing all of us right now. I'm going to refer you to come please see me. I'll be at the booth right back here at the tabling the rest of the day, and that includes anybody who didn't want to come and stand for a question. There are 2 organizations that are actively working to help you. One of them is us, American Atheists. We have an entire group devoted to this. Justin Griffith is our Director for Military Affairs. There is a gentleman named Jason, who is the head of the Military Association for Atheists and Freethinkers, and he's working on this directly with the military. And there's also Mikey Weinstein. So between those 3 organizations, we should be able to help you figure out a way. Is anything going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month? Probably not, but can we help you find other atheists, other groups to support you and find a way to get your specific examples reported? Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for your service. Green Lantern.
My name is Leon. I was wondering if there was a website or resource that has these legal things in plain text for the entire person.
I've been busy. Knowledgeable. I'm sorry. I'll work on it. Way to make me feel bad. Someone else come ask a question. Okay, you guys have been a great audience. Thank you very much. Oh, wait, Blair's going to come and do something mean.
First of all, to address the guy's question about the webpage, Amanda and I will get together at some point and we'll get this information on American Atheist webpage. Deal?
All right.
Okay. Second question goes to the idea of documentation. In the state of Alabama where I live, I can legally record any conversation without letting the other party know about it. Now that's not all true in every state, so check your state laws and see what you can do, because I've run into massive discrimination at work, and I've won every time. Not only does my company know I'm an atheist, they know what atheist I am and what group I work for, and my company's scared of me, I'm not scared of my company. And so there are ways to do it. Check your state laws. Those are important. You mentioned it, checking your state laws. That's very important. My state, I can record everything. That comes in really.
Most states, at least one person needs to know that the recording is happening, which is what Blair's law is. However, that's not true of every law. Does everybody, okay, some of you are too young, and if there are children, plug your ears, but the Monica Lewinsky scandal, the woman who tape recorded Monica's conversations, I'm going to forget her name right now, but she got, she got in trouble because in Maryland, I think it was Maryland, you cannot record conversations unless both parties are aware of it, unless you have a federal subpoena, or wiretapping subpoena.
You know about Kansas? What's our law with that?
I think you're just screwed if you live in Kansas.
But nobody knows about the recording.
You should be able to look it up. Wikipedia is great. I don't know what Kansas is, I'm sorry. I don't even know what New Jersey says. I haven't had a chance to check. But do check. Recording is fine, but just document conversations. Judges and lawyers are always impressed when we actually have a client that comes in and has documentation. You've already, won 50% of your cases when you can document what's happened. When you just come in and say, they're discriminating against me, that's really hard. But you come in and say, here, we get really excited. We kind of make our day. We don't need the little bullets that Daryl's passing out. So, okay. Anybody else? All right, again, I'll say it one more time. You've been fantastic, and we've got great speakers coming up. Phil Ferguson is going to launch right away without giving you a bathroom break. The bathrooms are over there, but don't miss his presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh, wait, Blair's going to come do something mean.
First of all, to address the guy's question about the webpage, Amanda and I will get together at some point and we'll get this information on the American Atheist webpage. Deal? Okay. Second question goes to the idea of documentation. In the state of Alabama where I live, I can legally record any conversation without letting the other party know about it. Now that's not all true in every state, so check your state laws and see what you can do, because I've run into massive discrimination at the work and I've won every time. Not only does my company know I'm an atheist, they know what atheist I am and what group I work for, and my company's scared of me, I'm not scared of my company. Okay, so there are ways to do it. Check your state laws, those are important. You mentioned it, checking your state laws, that's very important. My state, I can record everything, and that comes in real handy.
Most states, at least one person needs to know that the recording is happening, which is what Blair's law is. However, that's not true of every law. Does everybody, okay, some of you are too young, and if there are children, plug your ears, but the Monica Lewinsky scandal, the woman who tape recorded Monica's conversations, I'm going to forget her name right now, but she got, thank you. She got in trouble because in Maryland, I think it was Maryland, you cannot record conversations unless both parties are aware of it, unless you have a federal subpoena, or a wiretapping subpoena. So,
what's our law with that?
I think you're just screwed if you live in Kansas.
So nobody knows about it.
You should be able to look it up. Wikipedia is great. I don't know. I don't know what Kansas is. I'm sorry. I don't even know what New Jersey is. I haven't had a chance to check. But do check. Recording is fine, but just document conversations. Judges and lawyers are always impressed when we actually have a client that comes in and has documentation. You've already, won 50% of your cases when you can document what's happened. When you just come in and say, they're discriminating against me, that's really hard. But you can come in and say, here, we get really excited. You kind of make our day. We don't need the little bullets that Daryl is passing out. So, okay. Anybody else? All right, again, I'll say it one more time. You've been fantastic, and we've got great speakers coming up. Phil Ferguson is going to launch right away without giving you a bathroom break, but the bathrooms are over there, but don't miss his presentation. So thank you very much.
You have a little bit of time. I was actually going to share with you, when you were talking about the where the lines are, I was in the cube with the coworker, and he's a very liberal Christian, and we were having like the most friendliest, like agreeable discussion ever about how we view the universe and whatnot. And his phone rings, and it's his boss in Oklahoma calling to tell him, you have to stop. Because someone like 2 cubes down was terribly offended that the atheist was saying mean things. So it really takes nothing to set some people off. We all got the kind of talking to, said, look, we're not going to yell at you for this, just take it to the break room so that she doesn't have to hear you. We're like, okay, fine. So now we just go to the break room and when we have various discussions of politics, religion, and so on. So it can be pretty touchy. But thank you for coming. All right, she lied. You actually can go to the bathroom. Like, we've got a few minutes. We're going to get